Audacity just crashed on me. I'm glad it happened before we start.
Me too.
Oh,
Hello, my friends.
Thank you for joining us for the PEBCAK Podcast, a weekly information security show featuring some all-around good people. It is week 22 of 2025. I'm Chris Louie, and it's finally warming up here in Northern California. And I say that as it was warm, and now it's overcast and cold again, so just who knows with the weather up here. With me, I do not have the Cloud God today, as he unexpectedly got sucked into a meeting. And also, we do not have Glenn this week. We wish him well and hope he's back on the show next week. Now, before you think this is another solo show, we do have a guest. I did book a guest this weekend. I'm promoting him from guest to guest co-host. So our guest co-host this week is the returning CISO in residence, Ben Coral. The Walker's Coral. I believe Ben will also be fighting that desert heat this time next week, so try not to get heat stroke out there.
more water.
Hydrate. Very important. Yeah, for all the events that we've ever done out in Vegas, you have like Black Hat out there, you have Zenith out there, you have all these other events out there. I've actually never encountered anyone that had heat stroke. So I don't know if this is like one of those myths that they taught you when you were young, or just everybody adequately hydrates now. But I've actually never encountered anybody in person that's been going through heat stroke.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we're in technology. It's 72 on fluorescent. How much are you really outside? You're outside walking from casino to casino, venue to venue, event to event. We walk outside. We wait for the Uber to arrive. We jump in the Uber. The Uber's got bottles of water while you drink, going to the next
with air
event.
conditioning.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually one of the pitches. I tried to get my wife to move out to Vegas, before we settled here in California, and she's like, "Oh, but I don't like the heat. I can't stand the heat." And I pretty much pitched. I said, "Well, we have an air conditioned house. We have an air conditioned car. We have an air conditioned wherever we're going. Like, you're always in air conditioning. Like, well, when would you be ever facing that 120 degree weather unless you're trying to go outside?"
Yeah, but your car breaks down once, and then all of a sudden, Chris is moving.
Yeah, I lost. As you can tell, I lost that battle, but been here ever since. Well, combined, we still have decades of information security experience, and are here not just to educate, but to entertain. We've got 4 awesome stories for this week, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. This week, we're going to talk about a boneheaded move by a multi-billion-dollar company. The $5 wrench attack is real now. For our third topic, the rise of Skynet, and close with career talk. For our first topic, I wanted Ben to be on the show to discuss this one. UK retailer Marks & Spencer suffered a devastating ransomware attack that took down its entire e-commerce platform and shut down their physical stores. Their stock lost $500 million in market cap overnight, and they said recovery will take months. All signs point to those scattered spider kids as the ones who owned them. The reason I wanted Ben's take on this is that the news reports came out that said this $9 billion retailer had no incident response plan, none. It's not that they had one and never practiced it, they just had absolutely no plan at all. They resorted to communicating with personal devices and using personal email and WhatsApp accounts, and they required cameras to be on at all times during these recovery meetings just to make sure that there were no attackers joining those calls. They cannot even use corporate email to coordinate any type of the recovery effort because they had no idea if they were still compromised and if they fully evicted the attackers. Marks & Spencer at this point expect charges of at least $500 million for recovery and lost businesses. And my question is, what's the appropriate punishment for a $9 billion company not having any type of IR plan in place?
Oh my goodness. I mean, honestly, I don't even know where to begin. I could get so worked up on this one as we're still in the early days. Yet we can sit here with what you just went through. It's not sounding great. It's not sounding like they were ready. Why is a $9 billion organization not ready? And there have been warning signs for years now. What just happened last July with CrowdStrike and showing how dependent companies are on technology. And all of a sudden, a year later, this happens and they're still not ready. At what point insurance comes out, and we've talked about having D&O insurance, director and officer insurance, and making sure that insurance covers your chief information security officer as well. But at what point with insurance do we talk about negligence as well? And I hate to throw that word out there because, again, we're still very early on. But oh my goodness, how can you not start throwing something out? Because as you said, no plan. I love that in your breakdown, you talked about they've got a few things of, hey, we need you on your camera to make sure that the cyber criminals, the attackers, not here. But you're using WhatsApp, you're using personal devices, you're worried about something like that. But you weren't worried about having an out-of-band control. You weren't worried about having these resilient things in place. But all of a sudden, somebody's wise enough to say, hey, put your cameras on, and we're going to go around the room, and we're going to make sure that no bad actors are on this call. I mean, it's just like too little, too late.
Yeah, it's like elementary at that point. It's just basic things. Like, how do you,
yes.
It's having webcams on, everyone introduce yourself, have your manager on that they can vouch for you, hold up your ID.
Exactly. I mean, seriously. No. I mean, no systems in place. No real audit, no recovery, no ways. As the business leader for cyber, it is my job to know the business functions and how to get the business itself operational again. Get the BAU, business as usual, if you will. For the last 10 or so years, myself, my fellow CISOs, we've done everything. We've begged, pleaded, borrowed, whatever, for a seat at the proverbial table with the other C-level executives. We've been jumping up and down. Hey, pick me, choose me. Invite me to the party. We've finally been invited. We've finally been given seats. We've gotten offers to join the adult table at Thanksgiving. And you know what happens when you finally get to that adult table? You start having to have adult conversations. You start having to talk business. You're not talking tech. You don't talk in IT. You don't have geek speak. You start talking in business. But you know what I haven't seen yet? I haven't seen a rhetorical question. I haven't seen CISOs ready to step up and talk business. We haven't heard that we're ready to align our programs, the cyber programs, top 3 to 5 to however many initiatives, to the business's core initiatives. That 10K, the annual report, we're talking UK-based company, but still US-based has their 10K, that annual report. What are the three to whatever top initiatives for an organization, for the company, and align my program to them? My cyber mission has to align to the organization's overall mission. Else I'm not a business leader. I'm an IT leader.
For all the talk we've had, and we've been saying this for years, that cyber discussions are now board level discussions, and it's so I don't completely blame the CISO and the CIO for this one either, because it is a board decision, and at least here in the US, I don't know how the UK stock market works, but here in the US, when you do file that 10K, or you do file 8Ks with the SEC here, our regulatory body, you have to put in risks. Like, what are the risks to the organizations? And you have to say, well, there's risk of this, there's risk of that, there's risk of competition, there's risk our IP gets stolen. And at some point, they should have had the risk that says we could get hit with a cyber attack.
Yep.
And then the natural response is, well, what are you doing to prepare for that? And the first thing anyone should say is, well, we have preventative controls in place. We have an incident response plan that's been vetted and tested. Like, again, that seems very basic for a $9 billion publicly traded company, but just goes to show even these basic things get overlooked by these organizations, and they are paying the price. So I mean, my sort of rhetorical question is, what's the punishment? Well, yeah, they took a $500 million hit in their market cap, $500 million at least in charges. They're gonna be down for weeks, months, brand damage, reputation damage. Like, they're not gonna come out of this unscathed.
No, but that's this thing. Is what is their business model? How do they make money? And the answer is, yeah, they have e-commerce, but they're brick and mortar. At the end of the day, they make their money by selling goods in their stores directly to consumers, to you and I. We go in, we find out what we want, we give them a credit card or payment, one method or the other, and we leave with our goods. Our plans, our BCP, business continuity, our disaster recovery, our incident response plans should be, how do we get those stores back up and operational? That's what I, as a business leader, need to understand. Are they now paying a price? All of those things that are out there. Table stakes is having an incident response plan in place. That's some of the, foundational things that you build your program on. Do you have a program? You talk about all of that. Now, I've read that they're expecting to seek up to £100 million from their cyber insurer. And I'm sure that this, of everything else, is going to be fought in litigation. I'm not a lawyer. You're not a lawyer. We don't play lawyers on.
My parents ended up staying together, so I'm not a lawyer.
Oh, I like it. But I filled out the paperwork as head of cyber for organizations. I filled out the paperwork to get cyber insurance. I had to sign off that my program, that I had a program, and give some level of assurance and evidence to the cyber insurance that I had done my due diligence. I had a program. I had controls, administrative controls such as policies, physical controls such as locks, keys, door badges, things like that, and technical controls such as identities and multi-factor, things like that, and antivirus or endpoint protection. And then I had to say whether or not I followed an industry framework like NIST CSF or cybersecurity framework. On top of that, I had to have outside assurances like SOC attestations or the Big Four coming in and reviewing. All that just to be insurable. If they truly are going to seek $100 million of their cyber insurance provider, carrier, what did they provide? How did they pull the wool over the eyes of that insurer that they had a program that did not even include having an incident response plan whatsoever? It's just astounding that we can get there. I get it. You and I, early on, we're still in the court of public opinions, but take a look at some of the things from the SEC, back to the U.S., SEC looked at SolarWinds and reviewed the SolarWinds program after their debacle, looking at things that are in place here. I cannot begin to think about a security program that's in place for a $9 billion organization. And yes, losing $500 million, $500 million, that's 1/18 of their value. It's not without pain that's there. How do you build a program and not have some of those foundational programs that are in place?
And it's very similar. Like you bring up the CrowdStrike example and litigation involved in that. And one of the things that came out of the CrowdStrike debacle was that I think it was Delta. Delta sued CrowdStrike and said, you're responsible for, I think there was the same amount, like $500 million in losses. And CrowdStrike said, no. We did, we offered to send people there. We offered to help remediate these things. You declined our help. So you're partially at fault too. So I think there's got to be this finger pointing between Marks and Spencer's and their cyber insurance firm, because what their cyber insurance firm is basically going to say, you shot yourself in the foot, and now you're trying to claim that put a claim on the insurance. No, if you had a proper incident response plan in place, you might have been back up in a matter of days, not a matter of months. And it'll get fought out in the courts for sure.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, cyber risk and insurance. Cyber insurance is transferring risk. And that insurance carrier accepts that risk on their behalf based on you did something. You did your part. Did you actually do your part? And I don't know what they've actually seen or what they're basing that information on issuing that program as well. I will say that I've built security programs for organizations over the last decade. And I like to say that I go and I bring order to chaos, as I'm generally that first CISO, that first head of cyber for an organization, which means I go in and I start adding structure. And whether it's built off control frameworks like the CIS controls, or whether you're truly rolling out the ISO program, ISO 27000, whatever it is, one of the first things you put in place, and I'm talking your 30, 60, 90-day plan, by the end of 90 days, you have an incident response process. I may not have all my tools. I may not have all that fully understanding, but I promise you at the end of 90 days, I have an IR process at least framed out, worked out. I've gone to, in 2025 now, I've gone out to ChatGPT and I've put some prompts in there of help me craft an incident response process for an organization that works in this industry that utilizes some of these things. And it's going to craft you at least a framework process to put in place. And then you start personalizing that for, there's zero reason to not have plans in place that whether you've tested it or not, they at least exist. And there's enough things that have happened in reading Verizon data breach reports and all of that, that you know it's a possibility. And I work for a UK organization myself, and cyber was still one of the principal risks for that business. So every time that the board met, I had reports, I had information, I had conversations on how we were managing or how we were minimizing, because you're not always mitigating and remediating risk, but how are we properly managing the risk based on the risk appetite statements, based on the tolerances that are out there, what conversations were had. This is why you see in the SEC of the original, when it was draft, having to have cyber expertise on the board. Were conversations had? Put it on the organization. And that's why I really like your question of what's the penalty? What should be the pain caused to the company, not to the person? And I used to have a meme that CISO stood for Chief Impending Sacrificial Officer.
Very accurate.
What's the penalty to the company? Because this is not a single person failure.
Yeah.
Board's got fiduciary responsibility to make sure that the right management and programs are in place to manage the risk. So it's on the company right now.
Yeah, it's like IR. It's so easy a caveman can do it. If you can query, put in the right prompt into ChatGPT, and you've got this fairly comprehensive plan. And even if you don't want to do it yourself, there's so many IR as a service. Just hire Mandiant, have them on the payroll. Hire one of these other IR companies, have them on the payroll. But they just blatantly just had no plan whatsoever. And I'm sure, I don't know how the business model works for IR, that if you put them on retainer, they'll fly up to you within 4 hours or so. But if you don't have it and you call them in after the fact, I bet the cost is 10x more, 20x more. It's like that emergency plumber, right? The one that'll come at midnight on a Saturday. You got to pay 10x more, but you really, really need it.
Well, that's the thing. I had in my previous organizations, I had retainers. I even had $0 retainers. And you're like, what in the world is the value of having a $0 retainer with an IR firm? Because terms and conditions, MSAs, master services, all of those T's and C's need to be worked through. You work through that before the incident ever happens. And then you have a negotiated rate. Hey, we're 500 pounds an hour, or we're 1,000 pounds an hour for a response, and we'll be there within 4 hours or on site or something. But you can have a retainer in place, so you have all your contracts in place, and you're not sitting there getting your lawyers woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning to review a contract to get your incident response engineers, analysts, or responders access to your environment, because you can't even get them to start for the first few hours until some level of documentation and contracts have been signed.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, forward thinking, planning ahead, even if it doesn't cost much. But it seems this particular retail did not have any of that, and now they're scrambling. I should actually check, see if their website's even back up right now, because they did say recovery will take months. But yeah, they're gonna have a hard time.
Well, it goes back to that old adage of change is not necessary as survival is not mandatory.
Very true. Let's see. All right, so their website is up. Let's see if I can order something. Oh, okay. So the website is up, but there's a big banner at the top that says, "We have paused online orders. Products remain available to browse online, and stores are open." So at least stores are open, but it seems like their e-commerce, their ability to process orders is not there yet. And this is more than a month. I've been holding back this story, just waiting to get Ben on, and I know that this attack happened like last month, and they're still down. You still cannot place online orders.
That's just wild. Yes.
Yeah.
I cannot begin to fathom the breakdowns and everything that, the cacophony of things that had to happen to result in this.
I'll close with this. The old saying, retail's not dead, bad retail is but dead. And I think this is going down the route of poor retail practices, and we'll see if they survive it. For second topic, Bitcoin has hit a new all-time high at just over 111,000 per Bitcoin. This rise is fueling a spike in violence as a service attacks against large and high-profile cryptocurrency holders. The Wall Street Journal reports that the daughter of an executive of a cryptocurrency exchange was almost kidnapped by some guys in a van. The husband successfully fought them off, but some other crypto personalities were not so lucky. This is part of an attack that was once comically referred to as the $5 wrench attack. And there's a famous XKCD comic depicting bad guys, and I think on the left pane, it's the bad guys talking. It's like, drat, this person has 4096-bit RSA encryption on the laptop. We can't get in. Like, we should just quit now. And then that's like the dream. And then on the right side, it says, this is the reality. And it's the same bad guys talking, and the bad guy just says, just hit him with this $5 wrench until he gives us the password. So that's, the joke that the world's strongest encryption is only as weak as the person that holds the keys. Now, it's come to this as crypto exchanges and holders of large amounts of crypto have taken their cryptocurrency offline. As we reported last week, someone got $230 million stolen because their money was in a warm wallet, and Bybit famously lost $1.5 billion in a supply chain attack because they had their Ethereum sitting in a smart contract on the blockchain. So as crypto goes offline, attempts to steal it must also.
Well, it's also the article I was reading yesterday as well, utilizing insider threats and paying people to give me information on these people. What does their wallet? How much information is there? And this is one of the risks we've been talking about for years as well, of you want to take, not staff your IT people in first world countries, and where your country doesn't matter as much. But you're going to sit here and say, pay somebody $2,500, plug this USB in, give me copies of all the information. Now I know who to start to target for $2,500. Now say the person's in Utah instead. Yeah, you may have to add a zero. Now it's $25,000.
$25,000, yeah.
But you're talking millions here, or perhaps even billions. And paying somebody off like that's still a small amount to get you information. So it's becoming that violence as a service term has been coined, but I think you're absolutely right. And it's like, okay, you can break my pinky toe, you can break my knees. I'm still not going to give you information. But all of a sudden, you snag somebody's daughter and you start threatening to break her pinky toe and cause harm to her. What do you need? And so how do we protect against this? Do you have 3 or 4 different wallets and you're diversifying where it's at? I'd say that when I walked around the streets in Mexico City, I used to carry 2 wallets. And you carry your
The
dummy
throwaway
wallet.
one.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you realize you had to have something in that wallet. If you
Yeah,
handed
so
them an
it's-
empty wallet,
Yeah.
now they're gonna, cause harm to you. So
Now they gotta know.
yeah. Throw a few bills in there, put a credit card or something in there, one that's been canceled or whatever. Therefore, it still looks legitimate. So, do you have these dummy accounts that you point to? And as long as they've not gone the route of this insider threat to where they know you have 2 or 3 wallets and these have the real money in it, then when these things happen, you can give them, it's $100,000. I don't want to part with the $100,000, but still, it's not your $180 million wallet.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we reported on the Coinbase thing, which is I think what you're referring to is someone bribed a support person, a third-party company that worked for Coinbase, got customer information, including contact info, account balances, and the like. And I remember, you probably remember this piece of software. There's an open source piece of software called TrueCrypt, and it was an open source encryption, software encryption that you could use for USB drives and your hard drives. And there were 2 passwords. So if you typed in your real password, it would unlock your hard drive and you'd have full access to it. But there was also a plausible deniability password where it would look like you were typing in the password. It would open up and it would have like some dummy files in there. So it'd make it look like this is your actual computer, but it would actually be hiding what you're actually doing. Like, I mean, the use case, of course, was to protect political dissidents and increase privacy. But, with all dual use technologies, the bad guys could use that to hide their stuff too. And, I'm sure there are ways to figure out that if I unlock my hard drive and there's only 500 meg free, like, okay, well, yeah, obviously this 100 gig hard drive is hiding something. So there are ways around it. But I like that there's that step of plausible deniability built into that, and I think that's probably true for crypto as well. You have to have your real crypto wallet and your throwaway crypto wallet just in case.
Yep. But I mean, likely the people that are coming, this is a smash and grab. These are not going to be the tech savvy that are sitting there they're looking for this sorts of things. If they have gotten to that level and they have that level of technical background, your day just got significantly worse.
Yeah, and there's I think there's a pair of stories. So there's one story back in September, a Florida man was actually caught and sentenced to 47 years in prison, and that was his thing. He led a ring that carried out home invasions in search for cryptocurrency. And I'm guessing he targeted people that either bragged online about or had some kind of presence on it. And there's one person, he held a gun to this person's head and threatened to cut off his genitals, but the victim finally transferred $150,000 worth of crypto to the attacker. And then I think there was an article, I think just yesterday in the Wall Street Journal, about someone was like kidnapped in their New York penthouse and held there for either days or weeks until they were trying to extort cryptocurrency out of this person. So they might be there for the long game too, if they know that there's going to be a payoff at the end. And I just want to add, thank goodness I sold what little cryptocurrency I did have, and I donated it all to charity. So definitely don't come after me. I don't have any left.
Nice. There you go.
Yeah, so we're just going to see this more as, some people are predicting Bitcoin's going to go to the moon, 500,000 or even $1 million per coin. That's the direction it's going. And as that becomes more valuable and people aren't taking, because I would never say like I have $1 million worth of gold or I have $1 million worth of money in the bank, but you have these just people online just posting their account balances or talking about how much crypto they have, and it's like that's not very good OPSEC, that you're just painting a gigantic target on your back.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing is, Bitcoin's going to continue to rise, but then the point of entry to it. So now you start seeing these others that are going to start rising. And well, if they're going to do that, the Me Too's, and you're going to see other cryptocurrencies that are out there. But why? Why in the world? It's almost like social media. What would I say to you face to face versus what I will type on my keyboard? And I'll be bolder, I'll be stronger, I'll be more aggressive or assertive when I'm doing it digitally, because there's that veil of you think anonymity, even though I'm logged on. But same thing is you get there and my avatar, my username, my whatever is something that doesn't point to me. But as soon as you click on my profile, you have all my credentials because everybody
Yeah.
wants to be identifiable. And then you sit there and say, yeah, I've got $3 million in Bitcoin, a couple $1 million in Monero, and a couple others that are out. Why? Why did you just do that? You just painted a target on yourself. You could be bragging, you could be lying, but now this $5
the bad guys
rent,
don't know that.
The bad guys don't know this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and on the topic of age gap and privacy, somebody, I won't out them, but somebody in my circles, they're telling me they're my age, and I'm on the older side. I won't tell you how old, but they said he's a little bit older than me. He just married somebody that was half his age, so somebody from I guess what you'd call the next generation. And I was talking to this person's sister, and she said, "Oh yeah, I just basically treat his new wife like I treat my kids. Like they have the same personality. Like they're always on Snapchat. They're always posting everything about their life online. And our generation we're a little bit more private. Like for the most part, and I would say in general, we're a little bit more private. But the next younger generation, they just put everything online and." I referenced that story about Michael Dell. He spends millions of dollars on security and hiding his location, and his daughter just freely posts their location on her Instagram account or whatever. And it's just, different. We were raised different, the pre-internet generation.
Yeah. Well, you said the operational security or OPSEC and all of that. It's not taught in schools. And
yes.
I don't know why it's not. And at some point, do you teach basic financial literacy? I think in this day and age, we should be teaching basic operational security from an online perspective to our kids as well. It should be mandatory.
Yeah, and I know I'm part of ISC too, that cybersecurity organization. And I remember part of our volunteer work was like outreach, like going to schools and teaching these basic things. I don't know whatever happened to that program. Like I think I signed up for it. I never got called for it. I think they revamped it and I never heard back. But I thought that was a great thing that kids these days, and I can call them kids because they are the younger, the next generation. Like kids these days need to learn this OPSEC. And from even my kids, from a very young age, they have Chromebooks, they have passwords, and I teach them, passwords are like underwear. They should be changed frequently and never shared with anybody. And just, little things like that. And I'm actually pretty proud of my kids because, like, even when they type their password in and I'm around, they're like, "Don't look at my password." And they, like, cover up the keyboard as they type it in. I'm like, good. I ingrained that in an early age. Don't even trust dad. True TNO security.
Yes. Yeah, that's great. Until you're trying to get on their iPhone, their tablet or something, and you're like, "What's the stinking password to this? I need to take a look at this thing."
Yeah, I'm not quite at the age. I think your kids might be at that age, but I'm not quite at the age where I have to break in and check things out.
Well, a couple of mine, see, I'm a little elder to you. A couple of mine are aging out of this to where no, I don't want to know what they have on there. They're adults now. They have their own private lives. I don't see theirs. They don't see mine. Life is better that way.
Yeah. All right, for our third topic, this will be our AI topic of the week. Maybe it is a good idea, after all, for OpenAI to have a kill switch engineer to hit a switch to take the AI offline if it becomes self-aware and tries to kill us all. A report out of TechCrunch says that Anthropic's new Claude Opus 4 AI model turned to blackmail when engineers tried to take it offline. If this is one more sign we're getting closer to Skynet, we definitely need a plan. They fed the new model some dummy data, which included some fake company emails that said that this model would be taken offline and replaced. They also fed it some dummy data that the engineer that's responsible for taking the model offline that had been having an extramarital affair. And you guessed it, the model threatened to reveal that affair if the replacement was to go through. Now, Anthropic notes that Claude Opus 4 tries to blackmail engineers about 84% of the time, so more often than not, but not every time. Blackmail as a service, and that's a new one.
I mean, that's like fascinating, and scruples and morality, and a lot of times you talk about bias, and bias coming out of the AI, and I've looked at these things, and I'm like, does the bias come because it's there? Does the bias come because of the prompt and the way we asked things and the things we did? Or is it the human failures and, human in the loop? Where was that human factor injected here? So this one fascinates me. You're feeding it. It's almost like, are you taking it in a direction and you're shocked that it's going there? You fed in the extramarital affair, hoping, like dangling that little bit of cheese to see if the mouse was gonna follow that too.
Enticing that AI
Yes.
model.
So I'm sitting here like, did they consciously or unconsciously program it in order to get it to go down that route? Again, consciously or unconsciously here, where they helping it was going to go in that direction. So I don't know if we're getting our mixed scruples into these Gen AI platforms or not.
And there are just so many sci-fi movies that predicted this. Even like Space Odyssey, 2001: A Space Odyssey
Yes.
is very like that. I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that. And there is, I guess, a plug for the new Mission Impossible movie. I think the plot line is something like that. There's this rogue AI that's trying to take over the world or kill us all or preserve itself. Like, it's a tale as old as time. Like, who could have seen this coming? That AI would try to, find a way to prolong itself and threaten us humans as a means to do so.
I mean, you're forgetting the one of the greatest shows that was out there, Person of Interest, and you could sit there, you had Root, you had all of these, you had AI against AI, giving away the plot, in the last couple of seasons of, you had two AI systems going against each other and one was going to win. So how did you take it and how do you get one out of the ethereal into, so you can preserve that one if it's going to lose? It's going to be crazy. And people are talking about AI is going to take my job, AI is this, that, or the other. Not, we're worried about AI taking over the world. Jarvis was great. Tony Stark had Jarvis that was out there, and and all of that seemed well, but all of a sudden you see the rise of Ultron. Where do you draw?
Yeah, that's true. The Avengers, Ultron was like that as well. I mean, literally the plot of every Terminator movie, and
yes,
just where do we draw the line? I don't know if it's just Claude that has it, but they said that they're supposed to be implementing guardrails that are supposed to prevent this, and I think just like AI is improving, the guardrails that we're making are supposed to improve along with it, so that eventually when we put this AI into the Optimus robots, we're going to have Asimov's 3 laws. Like, we can't hurt humans, and that's like rule number 1. Hopefully they abide by that. They don't find some kind of crazy loophole like they did in iRobot.
Well, but that's the thing. At what point? We can't hurt humans, but we have to protect humans. We have one human who's trying to hurt the other human. Well, I can't hurt the human that's trying to hurt the 100 humans over here. So are you stuck in this unending loop of you can do no harm, and you can't hurt?
We're trying to teach a computer morality, which is a pretty hard thing to do. I remember even 10 years ago when Tesla started autopilot and Google had their Project X, which soon became Waymo, and people were raising up moral and ethical questions that said, I'm an owner of a self-driving car. The car is supposed to protect the owner, but it's kind of like the trolley problem. Like, if I'm about to hit a school bus, I can crash the car off the bridge. I'll kill the owner, but I'll save 20 children. Or do I crash into the school bus, kill 20 children, but I save the owner? It's like,
yes.
Well, no good answer there, unfortunately. But what's the model say to do? Is it the greater good? To protect the owner?
And then you start going through the ageism. Was the owner 85 years old? All of the kids were kindergarten, so they were 5-6 years old. They had all their lives ahead of them. This owner, the driver, and I'm like, so is an 85-year-old's life worth less than 6-year-old lives, and what if they're the CEO of this company that's doing all this innovative things? I mean, oh my
Yeah,
goodness, so
and you have
many
to
dilemmas.
decide that in like a split second. Yeah, do I brake? Do I swerve? Or do I accelerate full speed?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. It'll be interesting as AI gets better. We start putting into robots, start putting into cars, and what a time to
Are,
be alive.
are we ready for this?
Yeah,
I still remember dial-up, and I could tell by the way it connected whether it was a 24K or 56K connection, and
the
all of a
VOD.
sudden
Yeah,
we're truly talking about putting these things into robotic entities and self-driving cars. Sure, I mean, I watched Back to the Future. I was looking forward to hovercrafts and everything by this
oh
point in
yeah,
my life, but technology really is looking at the next era of what is that next era of computing and in AI, and sitting here talking about what can AI do. And we can talk about AI in 2027, 2028, when this Q day, quantum computing and everything comes out, and AI being bolstered or improved, being able to compute faster, as you just said. What's that going to look like?
yeah. Our only hope is that they develop the guardrails and safety mechanisms in parallel with that, and not get ahead of ourselves like we did with the internet when they built it with no security in mind.
Yes.
We had to bolt it on after.
Oh,
All right, and for our last topic related to what you said, Ben, about AI stealing our jobs, and there'll be a rotating topic every week. This week we're going to talk about career talk. And again, there was another interesting article in the Wall Street Journal that said high school juniors, so for the rest of the world, that would be the 11th year of school, so right before they graduate high school or secondary school. High school juniors are getting $70,000 a year job offers by going into what we call the trades. And the trades are things like plumbing, electrical, welding, things that are basically like non-tech things, very hands-on careers. And it's interesting that this has come about, and those are very competitive salaries, because when I was growing up, my parents would say, you're gonna be a doctor, you're gonna be a lawyer, you're gonna be an engineer, like don't go into the trades. Like that was kind of the thing that they said, like there's no future in that. But it's actually turning around now. There's so many people in tech that just got laid off due to AI, due to other reasons, and now we have a shortage of the trades, from plumbing, electrical, and welding work, because for us in America, we had the baby boomer generation. They're retiring now. They were doing this, what they call blue collar work, and there's not enough people that are younger to replace them. So now trying to find a plumber or electrical worker or a welder is that much more difficult. And now kids are going back to school to learn these things, because they could be very lucrative careers. So it's sort of like we've come full circle now. And I think it's an interesting trend that all these jobs are AI proof, and now that we've gotten so good at AI, now we have to go back to basics and go back to these blue collar type jobs.
well, and that's the thing, is if you look at these blue collar jobs versus college, you go to college on, I'm just going to say average, is room, board, college education, $50,000 a year. You graduate with $200,000 in debt to get a $100,000 job. How much are you paying just to pay off your loans? And then you marry somebody who has another $150,000 in loans, because they went to, they got a little bit of a scholarship there. So you only have $350,000 in debt. How long? That's it. People get mortgages in order to pay off that type of debt, and that's what you're coming out of 4 years. And they're graduating with everyone's now got a bachelor's degree, so now in order to differentiate myself, I need a master's. So let me go spend $30,000 extra or $50,000 extra to differentiate myself, and all of a sudden you're tacking on more and more to get what, for what skills? But at trade school, in order to be a plumber, what, 10 grand? And all of a sudden you're now making $60,000. And you're like, oh, who's going to support a family on six? That's starting out. And
Yep.
you can make six figures quickly within 5 years of experience as a plumber or an electrician. Start roofing and some carpentry and all of that, and all of a sudden, depending on the hours and the rates and all of that, you're at 125, 130. Yeah, all right, that's pretty solid. And, I'm sorry, one other thing is the lifestyle you are trying to portray. You don't feel the need to drive that BMW and that Audi. You're okay driving that truck or that beat up car going from job to job.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, it's AI proof. It's, for the most part, recession proof. Like if you have a leaky toilet, you're not going to wait until the economy gets better to fix that toilet. That's just one of those things that we're always going to need them. As long as we have physical things in the world, we're going to need physical people to come in and work on these things. So it's an interesting job trend that I think, and I've actually known people as well that they used to work in tech, and even before this tech bubble burst or whatever you want to call it, they made the switch. They went into plumbing, and they're like, yeah, I'm happy as ever. I love doing plumbing work. And they have apprenticeship programs. They have unions. They have ways to always be able to find work. There's always going to be new construction with urban sprawl and population growth. There's just always going to be need for these types of jobs, especially in construction.
Yeah. There's not enough housing. Therefore, there's always going to be building more, whether it's apartment complexes and all of this. You get populations of people, and all of a sudden you need a plumber. You need more electricians to come through and take care of these things. And like you said, that's some of those recession proof of, in the recession, I'm going to try to fix it myself, perhaps. And all of a sudden now I have to call in the professional to undo what I did and fix it the right way now.
Yeah. And I remember something I was going to say on your point of going to debt to go to college. So Peter Thiel, he's the owner of Founders Fund, co-founder of PayPal, very successful businessman. And he actually has what he calls a scholarship. So he basically says if you're a gifted or talented high school student, and he'll actually give you $100,000 a year to skip college and to work on your passion project. And he just basically funds your idea, your startup, because he knows that you don't need a college degree to be successful in tech. There's lots of examples of people that skipped out on college. I mean, they have backup plans, of course, and there is still some value in a college degree, but it's not like how it used to be, where everybody had to get it and every job opening required it. Personally, I've also been seeing it less and less. Even in the U.S. federal government, they removed the college level degree requirement to get a job in cybersecurity, because there's just so many talented people out there that don't have that college diploma, and the government can't hire people fast enough and just says, oh, I got this piece of paper that said I went into debt, then that automatically qualifies me for this job. And if I don't have this piece of paper, I'm not qualified anymore. So I think we're seeing job trends even going that direction, not having such a big focus on higher education anymore.
Well, and to your point on that, I've been in IT for 30 years. I've been in InfoSec for 26 years. Yes. Dating myself here. I've earned all this gray hair that you're looking at right now. I don't have a 4-year degree. And I went to some local universities where I live and said, I'd love to help teach some of these intro to cyber, some of these, introduction to some of these courses, or, one-time speakers. And they're like, well, you can't teach here because you don't have a master's degree. And in order to teach here, you have to have a master's. So it's like a multi-level marketing program here. You don't have it.
Yeah. You got to buy into.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've run programs for multi-billion-dollar companies. But if I had a piece of paper and no experience, I could teach. But I've been there. I've done that. I've got the scars to prove it. Yeah. And I can share those stories and that experience, but I'm not qualified to teach it. And that's the wild part about all of this.
Yeah. Just goes to show the various qualifications and requirements. A lot of them are just bunk. A lot of them don't mean anything, and there's no correlation between having that piece of paper and being successful. We're getting there, Ben. We're slowly course correcting. Well, we continue to get great comments about our Dad Joke of the Week.
Dad Joke of the Week.
This week, our guest co-host, Ben, is up.
All right. I'm going right back to the theme that we've been talking about for the last 5 minutes. Now, being spring and headed into summer, I realized I'm a bit behind on my honeydew list, and the wife keeps reminding me about it. So last week, I went ahead and I brought in some help. I hired a handyman, and I gave him a list of 10 things to do. And he brought me the list completed, and I saw that he did 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. And I looked at the list, and I'm like, what gives? He told me he's a handyman, and as such, he only does the odd jobs.
Wah, wah, wah.
It doesn't get better than that. Come on.
Odd jobs, yeah. All right, to wrap things up, Mark and Spencer had no IR plan when they got hit. Violence as a service is coming to a crypto exchange near you. AI turns to blackmail, and we're getting closer to Skynet, and learn how to weld. That's all I have for this week. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. You can find us on LinkedIn. Links will be in the description. Follow us on Instagram at PEBCAK Podcast. Thank you to our listeners and subscribers who rate us 5 stars in the iTunes Store and Spotify and left us a review. We appreciate you all spreading the word to help grow the show. The best way to find us is to search for the PEBCAK Podcast on your favorite podcast listening app. For our guest co-host, Ben Coral, I'm Chris Louie. Thanks for listening. We'll see you all next weekend. As always, have a nice day.
Thanks all. Appreciate it.
Have a nice day.